Yep. All right. Thanks for being here today. Obviously, a great weekend for Razorback athletics. A lot of fun. Obviously, excited to get spring ball started yesterday. Would like to have gone outside, but I think the weather dictated otherwise. But at least day one in the books, a lot to learn from, a lot of great things, and then a lot of things that we're going to sit there back and say we can improve upon. But the right mindset and right approach by the guys out there, I thought they attacked the field and the work with enthusiasm, with passion, and understanding what we want this thing to look like. Details got to get cleaned up, obviously, a day one installation. But then the biggest jump has to be from day one to day two and how we go about our business. And then obviously day two to day three later on this week when we put on the pads. But, pleased with it and excited to watch the film with the guys this afternoon and continue to make progress.
You mentioned just a couple of things there you were pleased with and disappointed with, but what maybe just kind of jumped out to you, like maybe a player or a position group or anything like that, and anything that you specifically want to see?
Yeah, listen, I always hate, and I'm careful to, sing out single players or position groups this early, right? Because, it's literally the next day it could be a complete opposite. The biggest thing I was pleased with is the competitive nature of these guys. You have a certain wonder of what it looks like. You see how they are in the weight room and in the off-season stuff, in a January, February, and even earlier this month, especially as we've done some of the off-season competition stuff. But then when football happens, what does that look like? And Trey, I think I was pleased because every rep from the get-go, even the walkthrough stuff of special teams, it was the competitive mindset and spirit of this group. And that's not coach speaking. That's something that you got to hang your hat on. And then you get to see some of these guys, a CC who was hurt all last year, step up and do some good things, competitive. Bradley Shaw, who was a starter last year that I challenged and told him he's got to play better and, had a good day one. So, but I think what you're seeing is we got depth at certain positions. Now, how high that ceiling is and how low that floor is to be determined. We got a lot of time to determine that, but I think we got some depth, and I like the way they attack the work.
How do you decide on day one who's at the front of the line, who goes in first? At pretty much every position, is it seniority based? Is it if all things are equal? Or
yeah, we made the joke last week about the press conference about the quarterback situation, a coin flip, and that truly is. So KJ got all the reps, the majority of the reps with the ones, and then tomorrow's practice, AJ Hill will get the majority of the reps with the ones. So it's kind of literally, I think what we're going to decide at that position is almost alternating days. Like I said, sometimes you can get into a rhythm and you don't want to just constantly changing that out. And then at other spots, it was okay. Some of the stuff we'd seen in the offseason, stuff we've seen in previous years. It's very hard day one just to put a freshman up there. Danny Beal's doing some good things, but you're never going to have a true freshman. Hey, why don't you go ahead and jump to that front of the line? Guys, Quincy Rhodes, who I'm going to continue to challenge. Obviously, Quincy's played a lot of football here and done it at a high level, so it made sense for him to go with the ones. But I told him, I said, listen, every day, you're going to be battling your tail off to earn that spot and continue to get better. And I think that mindset and that approach with some of these guys, whether they were a starter at another Power 4 team or coming from an FCS program, everybody has that opportunity. And literally, we as coaches, and this, again, we don't set the depth chart, they are. And there's no depth chart right now. We're just kind of throwing it out there and seeing what happens. I think when you're going to get to see the majority of, hey, this guy may get more reps with that first group, is once the pads go on. And then, after that first scrimmage and seeing what they're all about. And then a lot of times who can push through, who can run to the ball appropriately. All those things that we're going to determine that are important for us as a football program are going to go into the day-to-day and ultimately who gets to go out there with that first group.
So you'll be outside tomorrow if at all possible then, huh?
If at all possible. Even if I got to throw another sweatshirt on and steal Kyle's beanie, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I was also going to ask you about what we can read into. Who's with the first wide receivers? Who's with the first D-line, O-line? Not much to read into that at this point.
Yeah, I would really say that. I get it, and like I always say, I have so much respect for what you guys do, but I wouldn't read too much into that. I think it's just a general basis of let's go with it, and those pieces can move so quickly in day-to-day reality of this whole thing. And sometimes we're going to say, okay, even at offensive line, like how does this guy work with this center, right? And how does this guy work at this position? So I think just that flexibility. It may be a wide receiver that, man, we really think this guy is an X, but the guy behind him is pretty damn good. So maybe he can be the X, and this guy can. Let's see how this guy looks at the number one Z and moving those guys around, different guys in the backfield based off what we're doing. If we're, going back to the tight end question a couple weeks ago, like if we're 12 personnel, that will dictate some of those different things. So let's not read too much into it. Again, getting a feel for these guys, what they can do as a defense, installing a new scheme. Obviously, new schemes in all three phases, but I wouldn't read too much into it.
So you got two position coaches coming in to talk to us in 2 days, running backs, tight ends. I was wondering if you could hone in on those two spots. And at running back, Sutton seemed to be kind of I'll get to the front of the line type of guy. So how many running backs do you like to run in an ideal situation? And then what are your thoughts on those two position groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, let's start with the running backs. Just so you guys know, David Johnson, Yak Johnson, we have a history. Obviously, we're together at Memphis, and I'd been to his high school when he was a head high school coach, and he's all over. And obviously, he's been Tennessee and Florida State. So great confidence in him coming in, coaching our running backs. But with that being said, with what he's been able to do, is a guy like Sutton Smith had a pretty good understanding of this offensive scheme. Now, we're going to change things. We're going to have some wrinkles in, obviously, and continue to improve what we can do offensively, with Coach Cramsey and the rest of the staff. But Sutton has a good understanding. Now, that does not mean Sutton's a starting running back. That means he's going to have those opportunities, but he's a pretty darn good running back. And, challenge Braylon Russell as well. Is like, man, hey, Braylon, I want to be able to see you maximize what you're doing every single day on the practice field. And really, I got to give credit where credit's due. Braylon Russell's lost some weight. He is a healthier 230-pound running back right now, and we're going to talk to him. Maybe is his best weight 225, or is it 235? And he looks really good, and he leans up and can run. But I was pleased with his effort because, like I told every single person in this program, every single person, even anybody that we held over, like everybody's got a clean slate, but you got to go prove it. And Braylon, regardless of what was said in the past, has just stepped up and he's worked his tail off. And so high expectations for him. And then, we got guys, Bat and Settles, guys that, part of this program that we have high expectations for that can do it. And you got some of these other running backs. TJ Hodge is a young, true freshman that, the first couple of weeks it was, man, welcome to college football. And now all of a sudden he's going out there and seeing where he's at. Jasper Brinkley, the transfer running back, right? That's, kind of getting a feel for this system and understanding how we do things in pass protection. So that running back room has guys I think that we all feel like are capable. But I do. I'm really excited about what they are. You get to see them run around now. What are they going to look like on contact balance come Thursday? And what's pass protection really look like? It's easy when it's, one of the position coaches running at them with a bag at 3 miles per hour, right? It's a little bit different when it's a 230-pound SEC linebacker trying to saw them in half, okay? And then the tight end room, we talked about before, a lot of faith in Jaden Platt. Obviously, he's played the most football here. And then you guys, you got two different type of fullback tight end types, and like a Maddox Lassiter and a Matt Adcock. And those two still can line up and be, wide receiving type tight ends, but, are probably built more like fullback types, more types that are going to try to put their screws in your neck. And then, just kind of seeing what else we have in those rooms and getting a feel for what we have. We've got a couple transfers in that tight end room that we're excited to see. But, again, I think that tight end position, just like the running back, you'll get to know a little bit more. They all look good running around right now, right? But then when the physicality happens at both those spots, it'll be interesting to see how they continue to develop.
Coach, I had a couple offensive line questions for you. You've got two different quarterbacks. One throws left-handed, one throws right-handed. Does that change anything for up front for the offensive line? Do they switch sides? Do they have different play calls?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You get read back and like everybody thinks the most famous left-handed quarterback would be like a Steve Young, right? Like when Montana Young, did that change? And you hear some of these teams now talking about like a quick tackle, and I think Vanderbilt even talked about flipping their offensive line. I've never done that, and I think we feel comfortable with wherever those guys feel the best up front. Now, you want the ability for your offensive lineman, right? Like a left guard should be able to play right guard. You want as many guard bodies that can play center. You want a couple of those centers, if they have the ability to do it, to be able to play guard, and then can those tackles flip, right? That swing tackle, and a lot of that's my old NFL mindset. Like, you only get to travel with 7-0 linemen. Well, that backup offensive tackle better be able to go play right tackle, or better be able to play left tackle, and that guard better be able to snap. And so I think that's kind of what we're doing with our guys is kind of day one, hey, this is where you're going to be, but we're never change it based off of who the quarterbacks are.
And then a lot of the guys you brought over with you from Memphis are guys that have played a lot of ball, but one of them is Josiah Clemens that redshirted last year. What about him did you like? What made you want him to come over here and be part of the Arkansas program?
Yeah, I think we had this discussion not too long ago. Is like everybody wants guys that come in the transfer like, oh, they're immediate starters. No, I think sometimes you still got to build a roster and build it the right way. And that's not to say that Josiah can't have a major role for us. No different. Ian Williams, was really the only young defense player we brought over from Memphis. And, Ian played some special teams last year. And I told Ian, I said, it's your opportunity to go figure out if you can play defense here. And so Josiah is a guy that, recruited out of high school. In fact, one time was committed to another SEC school and, just stayed on him and told him about the things that, his development process as an offensive lineman, and just developed a great relationship with him. And ultimately felt like when this move was made, it was the right step for him to come and continue to be a part of this thing. But he's got, if you look at him, he looks the part. He's got great feet and he's got a great attitude about himself. But I think he has a tremendous, tremendous ceiling. And Josiah's one of those guys, I think, whether it's this year or in a couple of years, we're going to sit there and say, oh, I can see why you got that kid.
Same kind of question with Matt Adcock. You talked about him having kind of the fullback build, but what was it about him that made him a guy you wanted to bring over with you?
He's a tough sucker. And I think you can never, I think when you're building a roster, and listen, every year, hopefully we're not doing the full, all right, let's talk about these 65 new players. Hopefully it's a lot less next year for all of us in this room. But Matt was one of those guys, like, the way he plays football, right? His approach, first and foremost, like, he loves special teams, right? And people say, well, all right, you just got, it's great. Yeah, got to get the quarterback, go get the receivers, all those things. But when you can find guys that are buy into your culture, and I hate to say it's just a program guy because he's played a lot of football. He's played meaningful football. He's caught touchdown passes. He's been a fullback blocking, and being able to play meaningful football, understand the culture and the way we do things, and have that tough mentality about what we're trying to do here at Arkansas, I thought it was a perfect fit. And, he knows that he may not go out there and get, 50 catches this year at tight end, but whatever's asked for him of anybody in this organization, he'll do. And so that made the right fit at the right time.
Courtney Crutchfield was a guy last year that people were excited about, but just didn't ever really find an opportunity. What have been your impressions of him? I know you've had the one practice, but since you've kind of been working with these guys for the last couple of months, what have you thought of what he's done?
Yeah, Courtney's got to continue to make strides in the right direction. He has played very limited football at the college level. Obviously, he was a highly touted high school player. We're going to continue to lean on Crutch to step up and make plays. You're right, just one day into it. But, challenging him, hey, this is the way we practice. This is the way we go about doing things. And we've got you look around the wide receiver room, there's no, this is the guy, right? C.J. Brown's played some good football. Like I told you guys, I was pleased with some of the stuff CC did yesterday. But Crutchfield's going to have to step up, and he's going to have to battle his tail off. And, and I'm challenging him also as well. Like, hey, there's no guarantee that you're going to make the travel roster. And if you're not playing special teams, I'm not saying this is the case, but any of those guys, right, going into year 3, you have to find a way to step up and help us. And he's one of those that I'm kind of holding his feet to the fire and saying, hey, this is what needs to be done. And he understands that. And I'm excited because I think, like, one day in, then what's tomorrow going to look like? Then what's the next day? So to watch his growth, because he certainly has the talent.
I think Kamorei House was working nickel yesterday. Is that right?
Yes.
Is he a guy that could play nickel and linebacker for you? And also Christian Harrison was playing nickel. Is he a guy that could play nickel safety for you?
Yeah, great observations. With Kamorei, I think he's one of those. He was that tweener type, right? Like at one point at North Carolina, he was like 215, and that's just enough at linebacker to like wonder, okay, can he sit there and stick his face in there? But can he also play that nickel? And so in our defense, if you notice, we'll play with like true 2 inside type backer types, right? And maybe a little bit bigger bodies. And even then, we're not playing with the old 255-pound Mike. And so, that nickel position has the ability to go up and show up in the run game and play it, right? So if we're playing an 11 personnel team, it's perfect. Now, if all of a sudden we go 12, we may need to match, all right, and take the nickel out. Maybe he goes to a safety position, Kamorei does, because he's got the ability to run. Or maybe he comes out and then maybe we play with a bigger body linebacker and run a traditional 4-3, if you will, right, with a third linebacker. And then Christian, the same deal, right? Christian's, 210-pound safety who can also go up and play that linebacker type, that nickel will, however you want to call it in this defense, the star, but also go back there and has the athletic ability to play. So I think that position flex, right? Like you're not going to take Christian and say, okay, hey, need you to know the nickel safety and then also play corner, even though he has the intelligence. And then with Kamorei, that was kind of our thought is, okay, understand a little bit of that nickel position, but in a pinch, if we need you to be a fast linebacker, that ability to do so. So I think with this defense, we got some unique ability, right? No different that jack position. Does that allow us to play a 4 down front, which we did some yesterday? The ability of that guy kind of be a stand-up outside backer. So we're trying to do that. A lot of those guys having that 2-position deal, but I think that, as we're going to move forward, and when we opportunity to meet with Coach Roberts and some of those players, like, okay, is that a nickel? Is that a will linebacker? What does that look like? I think it's that kind of that hybrid position on defense.
You flipping safeties, boundary and field, or are they?
We have the ability to do so. Yeah, right now.
Same with corners.
Yeah. Right now, it's kind of that's where we've kind of had it. Yesterday was more a right and left, but again, the ability to do that, and then as we're calling it right now, a boundary safety and then a free. And again, people say, well, does a boundary one have to be better against the run? Depends on what coverage we're playing, right? If we're playing a lot of 3-week, sure, you want that guy to be able to be a box player. If you're playing some 3-strong rotation, and that guy's played yesterday, we played a lot of quarters. We can play some palms. So I think it all based off of what we're seeing, what the ability to do. Obviously, yesterday was day 1 install, just trying to get them to understand the alignments, the communication piece of it.
Corner's going to be more left and right, or are you going to flip those?
To be determined. I think a lot of it is like if you sit there, if 2 weeks from now, Trey, we sit there and say, man, this guy's really good as a boundary corner, cool, then we can. The part of that is sometimes difficult because you play these tempo teams, and it's like, wait a second, the guy ran over here and we were playing man, now I got to run my tail back over there. And so I think, if you can, and you say this guy can just play this, but ideally, I think in a perfect world, you'd like to be able to play right and left. And it shouldn't matter, but we're going to see the strengths, the weaknesses, what each one has. Do we have 4 corners that can do all of the above? Or does it have to be hey, this guy's a really good boundary, or this guy can play the field and we trust it? So much goes to that, like how much man are you playing, ultimately what you decide to do. So I think as we continue to progress, we'll have a better understanding of that.
You look like you've got a lot of the right body types on the defensive line through some of the efforts in the transfer portal, and then I guess some of the young guys coming back, of course, Quincy too.
Yeah, I think we've that was something we said coming in, even though regardless of what front we're playing is, we need to get a little bit bigger body types. Now, we don't have a ton of the 330-plus guys, right? There's a lot of SEC programs and Big Ten programs that have a bunch. They got 5 guys at 330-plus. We got plenty of guys at that 290 to 310 mark, but we want them to be able to be athletic and use their hands. And that was the one thing with the D-line yesterday I was pleased with is, one, you got to see a lot of the depth, and some of those guys are guys that hadn't played a ton, but the ability that we have high expectations for, right? And maybe he didn't play at the previous school, or maybe he didn't play as much last year, but we see them getting a role. Does that role mean 10 plays, 30 plays? That's to be determined as we go along. But I felt comfortable with the way they used their hands yesterday and the depth we have initially.
Antonio Jordan looked like he's healthy again. I mean, he was praised a lot last year. I mean, you were here, obviously, but then he got hurt and he kind of disappeared, but I saw him make a good catch yesterday. Just talk about the potential, because he's got size that you can't coach.
Yeah, when we, coming in to the initial roster, you sat there and said, okay, that's one true X. I mean, that Antonio is, probably not going to line him up at the slot and what we call that bigger wide receiver. And we knew going in, man, this kid has talent. And, he's a high-hipped young man that's physical. I mean, some teams would say, oh, is he just a 223-pound tight end? And so, we knew we had him, and that was one of the reasons people said, well, why'd you go get Chris Marshall? Well, I think you need a couple of those bigger wide receivers, because we looked up in the portal and said, man, we got a bunch of fast guys and some, guys that may not be that 6'2 plus. And but with AJ, he's got a huge ceiling. And obviously we've recruited some good players from that area in Arkansas. And but yesterday got a little dinged up. I don't think it's anything long term, but we're going to need him to get healthy and get going. And we have high expectations for him as well.
Coach, going back to Kamorei House, I think he was the leading tackler at North Carolina. Was he wanting to look at something like that hybrid role? Was that an easy sell for him, or? For sure, yeah. I mean, it's that fine line. Like, he led in tackles, but is that necessarily the best thing that occurred for him there? Because there he was listed as a linebacker, and he knows, long term, like, is he going to be a 230-pound kid? Probably not. And so that ability, he's got the speed and the quickness. And the intellect to be able to play in that intermediate, the nickel star type position. So I think he kind of really liked that. Hey, you're going to be, a lot of times you're going to be meeting with the secondary.
but then if that ball's thrown, into the flats or you got to come up and play the run, you got to be able to do it. I think he kind of liked that, the ability to, hey, I'm not just going to no one's going to ask me to play in the box. I'll be able to play a little bit more in space. And I think that fits what his character traits on the field from a physicality standpoint, what he's able to do. And I think in the recruitment process, it was something saying, okay, yeah, that's a good fit for me.
And one more on the offensive line, Malachi Brillin you brought over. I think his listed weight now is like 20 pounds lighter than what he was last year at Memphis. Was that what you wanted? Like, is he at a good weight for you now? Kind of what were you looking for him?
I think so. Yeah, I think as of this morning, and I don't know exactly what the listed weight is, but he's about 330. And, I'd even tell Malachi by the time the summer comes around and training camp, he'll end up playing probably come August about 325. And just getting a feel. I mean, he was 362 out of high school. And I've ever remember he was, he took an official visit to Texas, and then we bought him. And I sat down with him, and kid coming off an OV to a big time school and at Memphis, and I said, man, I just, I get it, and I looked at him. I said, I think you need to lose a little weight, and sometimes it's hard to tell somebody that in the recruitment process, but that was the truth, and I think that was, kind of like, oh, this guy's telling me not necessarily what I want to hear, but what I need to hear. And he's like, yeah, you're right, I do. I'll feel better. And he's slowly but surely done a nice job. His body's transformed. But I think if, anywhere that 325 to 332 weight's probably pretty good for him. Do I want big O-linemen? Sure, but if they can't move, it doesn't matter. And we don't want to be limited on our scheme based off the guy's not the ability to move around and be nimble on their feet.
Morgan Turner made the transition from the previous staff to yours. What did you like about him to keep him on?
Yeah, so a long time ago, I've known Morgan for a long time in this profession. Long time ago, his younger brother was actually had an entry-level role with us with the Minnesota Vikings, and got to know him, got to know the family a little bit, got to know Morgan at the time. And then, when you get to know these guys, I always say, like, you don't have to hire people just because you worked with them, or, sometimes it's about creative ideas. And then at one point when I was my timing between the Vikings and, Arizona State, really, I kind of just traveled, and I spent a week out at Stanford, okay? And at the time, Morgan was the tight end coach, Coach Shaw was the head coach, and Mike Bloomgren, who's now the O-line coach for the New York Giants, was their O-line coach, and I just spent a week out there, and so I got to spend a lot of time with Morgan talking about tight ends in the run game. Obviously, Stanford had a lot of success at tight end, what they did, and then coming here and understanding what Coach Petrino's done with the tight ends over his history, has always had a lot of success. Got to kind of study those things, and then Morgan was one of those guys. I sat down with him, and him and I sat down face to face, and I said, "Listen, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep you around, and right now, as I continue to kind of explore what else may be out there as tight end coaches, you're welcome to think if there's anything else out there. But let's meet every couple of days." And so it was kind of neat because I was able to be around him for about 10 days and talk ball, get an idea, and listen. Like I always said, that there's some great things from previous things that occurred, right? Being able to keep some of the administration roles around. And I thought, Morgan had did a good job and built a good rapport in that tight end room, and he's got some creative ideas, right? We don't always have it. And so with the success he's had in the past with being able to bring a new thought, whether it's in the run game, pass game, even in special teams, I thought it was the right fit for us to keep him around.
When you were talking about the nickel/tweener type guys and jacks and things, how we refer to him, but how does Ron refer to him and you refer to him? What should we call him?
We'll call it the Star, but you can call it whatever you want. You want to call it the Hog, you want to call it the Razorback, whatever you call it, we'll probably respond pretty well. But yeah, that we're calling it the Star, and so on the depth chart we'll decide. We always got to turn that in. Like, hey, what are we going to call it? I don't know. We may end up calling it the Will to confuse the opponents. But yeah, if you call it the Star, at least we'll all know we're on the same page.
And so the other one, is it a jack that you'll call?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that kind of that stand-up outside backer type, where we got Steven Souls and Waller and guys like that. That's kind of the Charlie Collins, that type of spot where they can put their hand in the ground and be a D end, but we'll call that the jack.
All right, last thing. What do you want to see at tomorrow's practice? I know advancement, but what all?
Well, I think that's the biggest thing is now everybody knows where to go, and hopefully we're outside unless the weather is what it is. That's why we have a beautiful indoor. As long as the hail and snow stay away, we're going to go outside come hell or high water. But I just think now, okay, taking that great energy, that great passion, and now let's continue to get better. So now tomorrow we're going to be going into the next install. Can you remember what happened in install 1? And now versus different looks from the defense and offense and even special teams, can they now continue to do it at a high level with a different look, still remember what occurred before and take those right steps? So now the play speed needs to be better. The communication needs to be better, because now there's no, wait, where are we going now? What that horn blew? What are we doing? And so now it needs to be a smoother transition, and within those smoother transitions, the communication better uptick, right? The details, right? Because day one, sometimes guys are just flying off the ball to fly off the ball with excitement to go play ball and put the helmets on, right? Because for a lot of them, it had been since end of November, and so this is the first opportunity to go show. So now, okay, that's great, and I appreciate that energy and enthusiasm. Now, can we go back and take the proper steps? Can we make sure we're making the proper call? Can we make sure the details continue as we look for that day-to-day improvement?
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.